So now you can all be intent on listening to this talk. So it's the 21st of March, 2024. It's the second day of this retreat. It's practicing Dhamma together online. And so you'll have the faith and the interest to come to practice. And yesterday there were about 50 different groups and people that joined, so probably about 100 in total. And we all come with the desire for peace. But the things that obstruct that peace are within our hearts as well. So we should observe our minds. We notice that if we do, and if we have mindfulness there in the mind, and there's some effort as well, then the mind won't be proliferating, won't be creating various things. Because if there are these creations in the mind, then the mind has moved already. And that shows that delusion is already active. That there's me and there's them, my things, their things. This has come up already. But if we have mindfulness very firm in the mind, working together with the mind, then we'll see the arising and ceasing of all of these conditioned things, these conditioned creations of the mind. And that they are not self, they're just conditions. So there are these wholesome creations, conditions, there are unwholesome conditions, there are those in the middle. But all of these come and they go. But if we have a mind that is devoid of wisdom, then we'll firmly and sincerely cling to these as being me. And the mind will just carry on creating all of this without end. So if we notice that that's what's happening in our mind, then that shows that our mindfulness is really quite weak, and the sati doesn't have much strength, that we're not able to stop these thoughts. So in that case, we need to persist, we need to put in our efforts, don't we? We need to try to bring our mindfulness back to knowing the meditation objects that we use, that's Buddha or Dhamma or Sangha. So bring the mindfulness back, bring it back into the body. And we do this for the sake of bringing our hearts to stillness, so that they don't go running after all of the sensations that we experience. Because when there's these external sense objects, and there's the internal sense organs, so we have our eyes and our ears, our nose, our tongue, our body and our mind. And then there are these sights and sounds, tastes, odors, tactile sensations, and the Dhamma aramanas. And those come in through these organs and they enter into the heart. And so there's also thoughts there. So in the language of Dhamma, we say that it's Dhamma plus aramana, Dhamma aramana. So these objects which come up within the heart. So sometimes we're just sitting very still and there are thoughts that appear. And so those are these objects appearing within the mind. So if our samadhi and our panya, our wisdom is sufficient, then we'll be able to understand these, to know those, to see that they're not a being, not an individual, not me, not you. So we can see the nature of these things. But if our wisdom is, and that's if our wisdom is enough. But we also need to understand that right now we're still practicing. And so we see the drawbacks and the dangers in the suffering which we have in our heart. So we see how if the heart is afflicted by anger, then that feels really hot. If there's greed which comes up and just carries on going and going, then that's very hot. There can be delusion that comes up and the mind becomes drunk on that delusion. And so it's like these defilements are consuming our hearts. And when this happens, then the heart becomes very weak. And the root of all unskillfulness is greed, hatred, and delusion. So we're born into this life, and that's what we experience. If we carry on like this, then next life, that's what we experience, and the life after that, and after that. And these defilements, they drag us along, and they can pull our minds down very low, pull it below the human world into an animal body or further down into the realms of suffering. And so that's if this ignorance and the defilements have a lot of strength to them. So therefore we need to put up a fight with this ignorance, with craving, with clinging. And we fight with the noble path, with sila, samadhi and panya, so this virtue, collectedness and wisdom. But if the defilements have great strength, then they're able to conquer us. And that's if the marga, this noble path, is very weak. But if sila, samadhi and panya is strong, then we can defeat the defilements and our hearts won't suffer. So in the beginning we see that there is still this struggle that is going on. And sometimes we just can't win that fight over the defilements. But what's really important is that we maintain our sila regardless, our virtue. And that's winning this fight to one degree, on the level of sila. So if we feel angry, then we don't act following that. If there's hatred or delusion, then we don't follow that. That we've noticed these emotions arising in the heart and we're able to control ourselves on that level. So when we do this frequently, then the sila gains energy and our hearts gain energy as well. And even though there's greed, hatred and delusion there, we don't follow them. And so by doing this, then we're able to weaken the defilements to one degree. We're able to maintain a sense of control over our minds. Because it's these defilements that push us into creating karma. And then when there's karma, there's vipaka, the results of that karma. And then the vipaka then pushes us into, or pushes the defilements to come up once again. So therefore, when the defilements arise, then we need to have our efforts to abandon them and to try to not allow them to come up in the first place. So we do that through mindfulness and wisdom, trying to maintain some control so that these defilements don't come up. But there's also no need to be afraid of them, that if they do come up, then simply abandon them. But don't have the desire for there to be no defilements whatsoever in my mind. Because if you have that, then you will suffer. That is vibhava, tanha. So this craving not to have and not to be. Because we already know through our memory, through what we've learned before, that thoughts which are not good, these are defilements. that anger is a defilement, aversion, delusion are defilements. But we shouldn't want for them to not come up at all. And that kind of desire is not correct. That's just overlaying defilement with even more defilement. So if we just wish for there to be only good thoughts appearing within the heart, then this is delusion already. When defilement comes up, the mind starts thinking something which isn't good, then we don't like that. There's aversion, there's hatred that comes up. But if we have wisdom, then we'll see that this is just something normal, that these kind of states, these objects, are normal things, that anger and love and hate, liking, these are normal things, that we need to have them in our hearts, that that's just normal for all humans, for all practitioners, to have these kinds of feelings. But what's really important is that we know them for what they are when they're happening. We also see how they're obstructions as well, not allowing our minds to come into peace. So we put in our efforts, then we strive. And this is not something that is beyond our ability to achieve if we carry on doing it. But in the beginning, all of us are chaotic. All of our minds are a bit of a mess. And sometimes there isn't samadhi there. And sometimes samadhi comes up and there's joy, there's happiness. But at other times, it's just not there. And then when we go off to work, we have to leave our samadhi or meditation. We go off and do our work, and then we come back, you sit in meditation again. Maybe the mind can come together and we can feel some peace. And there's lightness in the body and the mind, a great feeling of ease, contentment in the heart. But the samadhi is something which comes, stays for a bit, and then it disappears. Something that we have to leave. So when we're not in samadhi like this, and a sensory experience hits our hearts, and then the heart goes and runs off after it all over again. So we need to be cautious here. If our minds don't like something, then they become angry. If they do like it, then there's greed for it. And then there's delusion, thinking that these are me in their mind. So we need to try and have mindfulness there. And this is quite a hard thing to do, but we should still try. And also contemplate as well. Because one method of contemplation that we can use is the recollection of death. And this is something which Ajahn Chah had said before, that if someone has very strong greed, hatred and delusion, and no other meditation object will help, then they should contemplate death. So reflecting how life is something which isn't sure, but death is sure. And this is quite close to seeing anicca, this condition of instability or inconstancy. And if we recollect death very frequently, then we have this perception that we're bringing up of the unstable nature of conditioned things, and how they're not self, these are all sankharas, all conditions. And this is close to panya, to wisdom, but it's still on the samatha, the tranquility level. However, if we contemplate like this, then an ease comes into the mind. So even if it's not on the level of wisdom, don't worry about it. We're able to put down these feelings and objects of the mind. The mind is able to come into peace, and that's good. But if what we're feeling it's not so heavy, then we can contemplate the body as being composed of the four elements of earth, water, fire, and air. And that's all right to do that, or contemplate emptiness, recite Buddha. If we're skilled at contemplation, then contemplate following what object we're skilled with. So there's no need to doubt about this. When we start off, however, there'll be a lot of doubts, that we want things fast, and that's defilement. It's defilement that pushes us into wishing for quick results, into wanting to find a shortcut. And so maybe this is just tricking us. So maybe someone comes to try to cheat us, and they say, well, if you do this, and you just spend 10,000 baht, then very quickly, then you'll see the Dhamma. So maybe someone can trick us like this, trying to get quick results like that. But would we be able to get those quick results? Or it's like wanting to eat rice, but right now we don't have anything. And so in order to get that rice, we need to go out, we need to clear the paddy fields, we need to plant the rice. And there's a lot of work, a lot that needs to be done in order to get that. We need to train, need to endure a lot. And so that's true for our practice as well, because nothing comes easily. Everything arises following causes and conditions. And so for those people who have put in the causes already, then the results come up quickly. For those who don't have those causes and conditions, then the results come slowly. This happens in line with what we've created in the past, the spiritual virtues that we have put in already. But for all of us here, we all have our barami. We all have these spiritual virtues. I can see that everyone is close to seeing the Dhamma. And maybe during this retreat that will happen. That all it takes is for sila, samadhi and panya to be in a ready state, and you'll understand clearly. And so carry on practicing, carry on training, even though it may be difficult. Even though these states, so like anger, can really grab onto our hearts. Greed, delusion, they can really latch on to our hearts. And all of these are fires that burn us. But don't worry about this. The great awakened masters, that they've passed this state already, and they've all had to endure through that and have done it. And we can do that too. So some people, when anger comes up, then it can disappear very quickly. And for other people, they get angry and it stays for a long time. But if we're of the inclination or the disposition to get angry a lot, then we should train in cultivating a heart of kindness. And we have this kindness and compassion as the foundation for our meditation. So we contemplate in line with this metta, wishing for happiness for all beings, may no being cause harm to one another. Also understand how this and all the other meditation objects are for the sake of bringing our minds to peace. And that's also why we keep these precepts, the 5 precepts, the 8 precepts as well. So carry on practicing in this way until your samadhi becomes firm. And then you can contemplate in a way that allows you to steadily put down the sense of self little by little. We do that frequently, we do it a lot. And do this a lot, develop it a lot. this path of sila, samadhi and panya. And one day you will understand. And for myself, before, when I was practicing, then I would fall over and then pick myself up and fall over, crawl along, and this is how it was for me. That when I was a layperson, I was just like you, go off to work and would work a lot. But when I sat in meditation, I could bring the mind to peace, and there was coolness and ease there. But in order for it to get that ease, it would take at least an hour. But I'd still meditate every day. And I was fortunate that I was keeping the 8 precepts, so I didn't have to eat in the evening, and that gave me more time to meditate. Also, like to listen to the Dhamma because that helped to alleviate the doubts that I had, and I had so many doubts. So we should try to abandon the doubts that we do have and have a belief in the path that we are walking. And this is something that's really important. And to bring the mind to peace, because there are still these things which obstruct that peace, and one of those is doubts. There's also love and hate. There's the restlessness of mind. There's the ignorance which brings the mind to think and create. There's the drowsiness, the ill will in the mind. But for those who watch over their minds, then they will be able to free themselves from all suffering. So we need to have mindfulness firm and working together with our minds, and training ourselves and practicing as kammatthana, as meditation. So may all of you be sincere in this. And if you set your hearts in this way and do it without stopping, then one day you will need to see and know the nature of the Dhamma. Because nature, it already is this way. Emptiness is already here. It's just our minds have these defilements in charge of them. And so our minds aren't empty. But when we're able to relieve them of those defilements and they become free, then they'll see into anicca, dukkha, anatta. This is inconstancy and stress and not self. And really this heart is something that's amazing. And we need to train our hearts because all happiness, all suffering, it's here within our hearts. If our hearts have right view, then they won't suffer. But if the way that they see things is wrong, then suffering will come up. So we need to train these minds well. And so may all of you really be sincere in this. And so today this talk has been about sila, samadhi and panya's virtue, collectedness and wisdom. Training to have mindfulness, watching over and caring for the mind. And so why is it that our minds need to proliferate and concoct? Well, it's because delusion makes it do so. But if we see that for what it is, then, and our samadhi is sufficient, then wisdom arises and we see how there's not a self within any of that. And this is really incredible. The Dhamma is something really incredible. There's joy and happiness that comes up here. And when that comes up, then we get a great energy to put as fuel for our efforts in our practice. And as we carry on, then we can feel rapture come up all throughout the day. And this is possible. Whether standing, walking, sitting, lying down, for there to be rapture coming up all throughout that. It's really amazing, and it is possible. But in the beginning, we put in all we have to seeking out the Dhamma. And one day we will see the Buddha, we'll see the Dhamma within our own hearts. So may all of you grow in blessings.